Good morning and afternoon, everyone. My name is Kimberly, and I want to welcome you to AML Compliance Gray Matters webinar series. Today is 15th September 2021. Our guest today is Anthony. He's joining us from Switzerland, and our topic is the deepfakes awareness and risks. I do have a couple of polling questions to ask before we get started. So our first question of the day is, were you aware of deepfakes before this webinar? And if you don't mind just kind of letting us know, yes or no, you were aware. And that kind of helps us understand our audience and your kind of background with this particular topic. I'm going to give this just a couple more minutes. In the meantime, I'm also going to introduce Wes. He is also with Silo. He's our head of technology, and I've asked him to join us because this is a bit of a technology discussion as well, what technology can do and some of the risks behind it. So welcome, Wes, to the first webinar. Thank you for joining us. Also, and of course, Anthony, I'll give a little bit of background about him as well. So I'm going to close this poll now. We've got quite a few responses. I'm closing, and I'm going to share. We have, yeah, 67% were not aware of deepfakes before signing up for this webinar. So thank you to those of you who were not aware. You're taking your time today to kind of learn a new topic. It's something that all AML professionals need to be doing these days, is just constantly learning. Another question I'm going to ask, so I'm going to hide those results. And this is where the reason why I wanted to explore this particular topic. As a former compliance officer, I did onboard a lot of clients, and even pre-pandemic, we did a lot via email, and of course just conference calls and snail mail. So I'm kind of asking you guys, how do you normally onboard your clients? Because I think, this is my personal opinion, and Anthony may disagree, and Wes might disagree. I think deep fakes are a real risk for onboarding when you're not doing onboarding in person. So I'm just kind of wanted to see what our audience is, how they're still onboarding new customers or clients, and it could be a hybrid. So I realize the answer choices might not be 100% yours, but just go ahead and give us an idea. And I'm going to now close this and show the results. And we have right now 23% are saying you still meet in person. And of course, this will all depend on what type of industry you're working in. 43% are saying you onboard new clients using video calls and telephone calls. And 30% neither. You use all written communication. Okay. All right, fantastic. So thank you for your time, and I will have one more poll question at the very, very end. So I'm going to move on to our next slide. This is a little bit of housekeeping. Again, today's guest is Anthony. I'm Kimberly with Silo. Certificates will be given automatically to all live attendees only. Just a reminder, this is not legal advice. Your local regulations and guidance do vary anytime I'm talking about compliance and AML compliance. I just want to remind everybody. We think this is going to take about an hour. I will definitely wind it up at about a quarter two if I start seeing that we're getting into too many questions and discussion, which is easily done when you get these interesting topics. There are no handouts today. And again, we will take some Q&A from the live audience at the end when Anthony's kind of finished with his presentation. So Anthony, go ahead and just give us a brief kind of bio on yourself. Let our audience know who you are and why this is kind of a passion for you, understanding deepfakes.
Myself. Well, okay. Well, I'm a Swiss citizen. I did my studies in the States. I studied political science at Georgetown. Then I moved to Moscow in Central Asia, where I lived for about 17 years. And I was in the middle of the Russian and the Soviet propaganda machine. I have a slide after this to show you. And when I moved back to Switzerland, my co-founder in Israel proposed the idea of identifying the difference between a digitally altered image and a real one back in 2016. And I invested in it and eventually became CEO of the company. We are now based out of EPFL, which is one of Europe's leading research universities. We work with the chairman of JPEG, who's the #1 man in visual imaging, and we started researching and developing solutions to what became deepfakes well before this was. We were actually called crazy 4 or 5 years ago. So that's my background. We are a company that provides solutions mostly to technology companies who then resell it on to banks and financial institutions. We're still at a very early stage. But what we say is seeing is no longer believing, and we've been saying this for the past 6 years, but it's only been a year or two that people are now listening to us. So if that's
Yeah.
good enough to go, I'm happy to go to go on with the presentation.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you again for joining us. And just a little bit of background. We, Wes and I had spoken to Anthony a few months ago because we are always looking at technologies that can help the compliance industry and compliance professionals. And I just thought the topic itself was something that I was not very familiar with, and that what you're doing was, like I said, I was just very impressed. And I can definitely see some risk of deep fakes being used to help to steal identities and defraud, embezzle money. I don't. Did you want to explain this kind of
I do.
photo?
I was going to say this is something I actually bought when I was at Georgetown. It's a book called The Commissar Vanishes. It's a fascinating coffee table book I still have, and it depicts the change in politics in the Soviet Union through pictures, how Stalin had people around him airbrushed out of history as if they never existed. And it's a very interesting book if you can find it. My point being was trickery in images is nothing new. It's not new to the computer age. It's been around about as long as photography has been. But now, if you could go to the next slide, I'll explain what a deepfake is.
Okay.
So the term was coined in 2017 from a Reddit user who combined the term deep learning and fake, deep fake. It is basically changing the face of a person to be morphed into somebody else and having him say whatever you want him to say. On the bottom here, you have a very famous example of, I think it's Key from Key and Peele, who deepfaked then President Obama to say something he never said. What makes it a deep fake and what makes it different from previous technology is that the burden of decision making has been shifted from a human, whereas above you had to cut and paste or airbrush, or 10 years ago you had to have somebody CGI it. Now you have applications that do this for you seamlessly, and you can do it in your iPhone. So it is ubiquitous, easy to distribute, and a 6-year-old can use it. That's what we define as a deepfake today. And that's why they could be potentially very dangerous, because anybody can make them. Whereas before, it really was in the realm of Hollywood CGI studios, and it cost them the tens of millions of dollars to do. If we could go to the next slide,
Okay.
please. Okay, so are they a threat? They definitely are. We were asked to deepfake the president of Switzerland saying something he didn't say. It was asked by one of our news organizations. Everybody had signed up on it. It had to do with the COVID vaccine. Half of the people believed it, half of the people didn't believe it because of the context, but the video was very realistic. You could see economic problems. We were talking about this with Kimberly. I'll get into what I think about it a bit later. But imagine seeing a video of Jeff Bezos saying, I'm dumping this stock, or Warren Buffett maybe, or Elon Musk buying Bitcoin. Markets will move. And then you have the problem of societal instability. There's a very famous case in Pakistan of a poor girl called Asia Bibi who was caught defaming the Quran. Nobody saw her, nobody heard her, but she went to jail for 9 years. Now, if you actually deepfake this and throw it into a nation state like Afghanistan, you could use this as a very, very simple way to eliminate people, political or business competitors. So yes, deepfakes are an issue. Could we go further, please, Kim?
Yes.
Okay. How do they work? Well, they basically use what's called a neural network to take a target image and then put the required image in its place. I won't get into the technology of it. There are apps in your iPhone that can do it for you now. So basically, you choose a face, you put that face into your iPhone, and you can make that face say whatever you want and it will look, it's getting more and more realistic as the technology advances. We could go to the next slide. So
Okay. I think a
here,
lot of I saw this one before. I'm going to go ahead and hit play, although I'm going to kind of adjust the volume might not be there, but go ahead, Anthony.
so here is a very famous example of an attorney that called into a Texas Supreme Court hearing as a cat. He was actually speaking to the cat on the bottom right. We are aware of attacks that have happened, phishing attacks. We're talking about one with Wes that was just an audio deepfake. But now, with just one picture from your Facebook profile, I can call you back with your face and make you say what whatever I want you to say. We did this for a Swiss media TV show where we deepfaked the producer of the show telling his team live from a phone that I'm late for my train. Could you please quickly send us $200 by this money application? I've lost my phone. He was in the room with us, but the team admitted they would have done it had they not been aware that it was a deep fake. So yes, there will be issues of people phishing with this or targeting people to fool with a deep fake for whatever the reason may be. Could we go to the next?
Yeah, and just to explain, for those who might not be aware of the terminology, phishing is it's with a PH. You've probably heard of phishing emails. And there's also a term called spear phishing. That means when they're targeting a very specific person, usually a CEO or some kind of head of a company, and that's when they're targeting a very specific company or individual.
Spear phishing fits better, absolutely, Kimberly.
Mm-hmm.
So what does our technology do today? We detect deepfakes. We're not focusing on this now because I'll get to it. We don't think it's something that's going to be monetizable as a business for us in the public domain. We are working on programs now to tell you if it's a benign deepfake, something made in Hollywood, or a malign one. And we're waiting for the day where social media might have to take responsibility for when they post things. Then it will become an interesting technology for us to market. But
Okay.
behind all of this deepfake technology, here's where it gets interesting. We are now building a prototype for one of our NGO customers in Switzerland. They've all moved online. It's a very big forum at Davos. You can guess which one. They have about 1,000 people online at the same time. And they're very concerned that somebody comes online who isn't who he's supposed to be. As I said, with just one picture, a target face, I can come online and pretend to be that person during the conference, and it could cause chaos. My actual pitch to them is, how much is it worth to you not to be sure that everybody online is who he's supposed to be? This is going to be a very serious issue in live deepfakes. I'll come back to why I don't think deepfakes in social media or offline deepfakes are going to be that dangerous later, but this is something we do now, and we're selling the solution to some private banks because it is a very serious problem in onboarding. I can now actually, not so easy, but I can deepfake my face and the face on a passport and move the passport as we speak. This technology will become ubiquitous in about 6 months. What we're seeing more and more of also in the onboarding process is people who are forging documents on a computer screen, then capturing the screen as if it was a passport, because you have to, so some eKYC companies force you to use their application. So we detect if it's a screen or if it's a real passport. We actually just have 2 clients in the States signed up for that. You can go to the next page. What we've also focused on in the last few months, we just found out about it, is a lot of eKYC providers or onboarding had problems where people would scan a passport, falsify the passport, print the passport, then take a picture of the piece of paper. So we've developed technology just very recently in the last few weeks to tell the difference between a real passport and a print or a scan of a passport that's been printed. It's becoming easier and easier to do with the use of AI. If you could go to the next slide, please, also. Oh, as an added bonus, we also do facial matching algorithms because we do see a problem in this conference. You can imagine if you're 1,500 people at the UN, you've signed up with passports, you want to make sure that the person coming on to speak is the person that's supposed to be speaking. Otherwise, chaos could ensue. So this is another issue, a threat that we are addressing from our little base here in Switzerland.
Okay.
If we go to the next one. And the big thing, we're surprised actually. We thought the big thing would be insurance. It's not. The big first push of clients is coming from the KYC sector. We have seen, we have touched base with about 200 eKYC providers. The ones that we're working with, 3 or 4 of them, are doing over $1 million a month of these KYC onboardings. It's growing at 20% a month. And what they are seeing is more and more cases of people either changing the picture to fit somebody else's face, or changing the alphanumeric data, either to make the person older or to change the social security number. Who knows why, but we catch that with our algorithms now. If we could go to the next slide, please. Okay. And we do the same for document management with companies who do OCR. So if you change something in a document for an insurance company, we catch the change of signature, we catch the change of amounts. What we are focusing on as a company is really to streamline workflow and to de-risk the onboarding of a client. And in the
Okay. I had a
insurance,
question on this. Do you have to have the original document? I mean, how are you looking at document
okay, there
security?
are 2 ways we do this. We just had a call with one of the biggest credit card companies in the world, so you can pick one. There's only 3 of them. For them, what we do is we have machine learning where you basically tell the machine, this is a good document, this is a bad document, this is a good document, this is a bad document. In this case, you would present it with documents where signatures have been forged or where something has been changed in it. So our algorithms go behind the document to look at what has been done to the document. It's agnostic of where the document is from. But let's say you are somebody we're not working with, Riggs National Bank, Washington, D.C., and you want us to train specifically for your documents, we can do that also, but we don't have to know what type of document it is. Just recently in our tech incubator, somebody got a $65,000 bill where the header was photoshopped. We're a bit late, but we caught that. They sent the money to the wrong banking address. So this is the kind of stuff we can flag very quickly and very cheaply, actually, in workflow. So no, we don't care what kind of document it is. This does raise the question, if you make what we call an ex nihilo document, a document from nothing, we can't catch that. If you haven't actually, does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So here we see a car insurance use case. We were speaking with a very big insurer to their Italian subsidiary. They had the problems that their own claims adjusters were making deals with garages to take fraudulent pictures, Photoshop them, and then split the difference of the extra money for repairing a car. No comment as to the Italian economy. But here we can very quickly tell an insurer that this is not what this doesn't exist. This has been added, photoshopped to the claims process. Before COVID, most of the people in Switzerland, people would tell me where we're going to go and have a look at anyway. COVID kind of blew away that argument for claims under $500 or $600. So COVID has actually accelerated our to-market strategy in this use case.
Yeah.
So that's good. So I also wanted to say not all deepfakes are bad. Here you see the De Niro, who has been de-aged for his role in the Irishman, and we are working on technology now to discriminate between a bad, a malign, and the good deepfake. It's a bit technical. It's about 1.5 years away, but that's the road we're going down for deepfake. So it's not all necessarily negative. Like any technology, it's a dual-edged sword. It's the human behind it and how you apply it that makes it good or evil, in my opinion.
Interesting. Okay.
So the next one. Now, here is where I'm going to leave you with a few questions. Deepfakes are there. I gave a speech at the Media Security Alliance 2 years ago in LA. The BBC invited me. I told them it would take 3 to 4 years. It took 6 months. So the technology to make this stuff is accelerating. You're going to see it seamlessly soon appear on iPhones. You'll be able to do audio and video at the same time. And the question is, how do you convince somebody that doesn't want to be convinced. You can take, if you're on the left, the Pizzagate example, if you're on the right, the Columbine example. You have people who, no matter what you say, no matter how many boxes you put around somebody's head and tell them it's a fake, won't believe you. There's no way to get around that issue of the confirmation bias and the lack of critical thinking we see nowadays in people around the world. If we could go to the next slide, please. Yeah. And again, another very big issue in this space of fake media is targeted media. Media is being tailored and curated to our taste. Social media, including YouTube, is now pushing media that you want to see. Try it. Just try looking at cat videos on Google 4 or 5 times. You'll get only cat videos after a while, I assure you. The solution is the detection, standardization, and legislation, but this is going to take 5 to 10 years. I was just speaking to Kimberly about a new branch of psychological science that's coming up. It's called cognitive immunity. People will have to build up a strong cognitive immune system and start questioning what they see, because seeing is not believing anymore. And the media is using this more and more to spin things for clickbait and to gain traction. If we could go to the next slide, please. Okay. So my discussion with Kimberly before this started is, will this have an effect? And my point is, yes, in the beginning, it will have a huge effect. If you see an Elon Musk or a Jeff Bezos saying he's going to dump something and it takes a few hours to debunk it, you will see markets move. But it's not going to happen 20 times. People are going, at least smart people are going to build a certain immune system to this. The first attacks will probably be vicious. The people who get there first will make a lot of money. But eventually you're going to ask yourself, is it George Clooney, the actor? Is it George Clooney, the person? Or has somebody deepfaked George Clooney into saying something he never did? And in a very perverse way, I see it almost as a return to privacy, because you can always deny it was you. You know, we've gone one way and now things are swinging back the other way. How to stay ahead of a technology that's growing exponentially? Well, we personally plan only to focus on live deepfake, because that's where we see our market and where we see the real threats to be, the spear phishing attacks or the onboarding of clients. We're not going to focus on saving the world from fake media. I don't think we could if we wanted to. And like with all technology, it's a double-edged sword. I think that's what I leave you with. Is there anything else
Okay.
after?
Sorry, Wes, did you have any questions?
No, I don't have any specific questions, but I wouldn't mind adding a quick comment, if you guys don't mind.
No, go for it.
You know, we go through some of the, and Anthony did a great job of explaining most of the details without going into too much technicality there. But I think sometimes we see new technologies and new ways of attacking and getting information from people as almost science fiction, and deep fakes are one that people kind of see. That you can see YouTube videos all day long of you know, people putting different actors' faces in different movies, and you know, and it seems all in good nature. And Anthony mentioned that briefly about the benign deep fakes, but I think sometimes we get a little overwhelmed with the humor of those things, and we don't kind of understand that it's not just science fiction and it's not just for our entertainment. This stuff is very real. And I'd like to add an example to kind of just make people understand how easy this can happen. And it's an audio deep fake. It's from 2019, and it was a UK company, an energy company in the UK. The CEO of that company was tricked into wiring a significant amount of money to an attacker. What happened was this CEO was called on his business phone by the CEO of his parent company in Hungary, and was asked to wire, as a matter of emergency, 200,000 euros for an invoice that was outstanding. This phone call was accompanied by an email that had also been spoofed to make it look like it had come from that CEO. He saw the email. He listened to the person's voice on the phone, which was someone he'd spoken to many times before, sounded just like him, and he wired this attacker 200,000 euros, really without any question. This was really only discovered because the attacker got greedy and a few days later tried the same thing again with the same person, basically the same method of operation. And this was, rang alarm bells for this particular CEO. And he called the person on his cell phone instead of the business line, and actually had at one point had the real person on his cell phone and the attacker on his business line at the same time. And he said later on that if he didn't know, there was no way he could have told the difference between those two people. So in that particular case, they lost 200,000 euros just because somebody did a very good job of faking an audio recording, not even a recording, a live audio of a person that the guy knew, was friends with, obviously well enough to know that he had his cell phone number. So I think we just need to be conscious that maybe this stuff isn't going to happen to us all the time, but those things are already out there. They're already working. Attackers are already very, very good at doing these things, and they only have to be lucky once. Right? We have to be conscious and be careful about these things in everything we do every day. They might try schemes like this 20, 30, 40 times a week, but they only have to be lucky once, like in that scenario, to get a year's worth of payoff for it.
Exactly. And for me as a compliance person who had to write policies and procedures, it's that knowing about this kind of stuff now, as it would be my suggestion is to review your policies and procedures and see if you have anything in place. Like if you did get somebody in your accounting department who got that phone call and who would traditionally just kind of react to it because it's her boss or his boss, and does what's kind of told, maybe that's anything that's kind of out of the ordinary needs to be reconfirmed, not just the email and the phone call, because as you say, there's two technologies being used to use the fraud, the phishing, the spoofed email as well as the phone call. But also, of course, then making sure that somebody's calling, the actual, numbers or things like that. So there's got to be ways that are procedures that companies can take. And I do worry too. We do a lot of work with wealth and asset managers, and of course, anytime a spear phishing attack is going on, obviously they're going to go after high net worth individuals, people they know they have money. So I do think this is something that our wealth and asset managers need to be very aware of, as well as these potential risks, because you might get that phone call that's from a client, high net worth client, and say, hey, send me this check for 50, send me the money for 50,000, I need it today, kind of
I can
thing.
tell
So
you, we know it happened. I know a few people who's happened to.
yeah,
I can't speak about
absolutely.
it, but it's happened, definitely.
Okay. We have some time for questions from the audience. Feel free to use the question box. Right now, I'm not showing anything, so it could be that everybody's just kind of, just learning and soaking it all in. So that's fine if you don't have any questions. Just kind of going back to that one conversation we had earlier, and as you said, Anthony, you didn't think this is going to be a big problem for stock market manipulation in the long term. You think maybe people might kind of see it might happen a few times initially, but then people are going to wise up.
Of course it could be, but I mean, what happened? Was it GameStop, GameSpot? I forget what.
Yeah, GameStop.
What's the $10 billion hedge fund going to do? It's going to hire $1 million social media people, and play it. It's not going to happen again. I think, if they're smart. I think it could be if it's used very quickly, very precisely, and has but again, how many times can it happen that you get faked by somebody saying something he didn't say? Once, twice, 10 times. Eventually, people will wisen up and wait. I think for confirmation. I'll give you an example. When the elections were going on, we were asked to check videos of both candidates. One was being too nice and one wasn't. You can decide who was who. And the first thing we did before we even sent it to our algorithms was to check the context. Who else was in the room? And was it on Fox? Was it on CNN? And if it was, you don't even have to check if it's deepfaked or not. So there's a lot of contextual analysis to do, and I would urge people to use their rational minds before relying on technology. We're selling the tech, so we hope you use it too. But yeah, the weakest
Yeah,
link in any security chain is the human being.
absolutely, absolutely. Okay. I don't have any questions from the audience. Again, I think everybody's just kind of soaking it in. I'm going to issue one more poll question that just to kind of helps us understand, if this session kind of helped. Can you see the polling question?
Yes, we see it.
Okay, fantastic. So we're just kind of asking, after hearing from Anthony, do you think your company could be at risk? And if so, I do hope that you work with your compliance team to our policies and procedures writers to put in some procedures and just raise some awareness amongst your staff as well. And Anthony, while they're answering this question, what about financial statements? I mean, I know a lot of investors, for instance, do rely on, review financial statements. Do you see?
Oh, we have just been asked by, again, one of the big credit card companies. It's a bit of a Kafkaesque situation. They issued a lot of credit cards during COVID based on faked financial statements, and they are now
Oh,
being sued because they issued cards and did not do enough due diligence into the finance of the people they issued the cards to. We're speaking to them tomorrow. It's a big
oh
issue.
dear. That's huge. That's huge. All right. So poll results are in. Yes, we've got just under 60% saying yes, you can see that companies are at risk. So I'm glad we could raise this awareness and maybe help you fend this off in the future. So thank you very much for participating in that poll. So I'm going to wrap up here quickly. Again, thank you very much for attending today and spending your time. I know your time is very valuable. Our next webinar is actually going to be next week, so we're kind of close together here. I'm going to have Paul Coleman. He's from Turks and Caicos, and we're going to be talking about MRO supervision. Oh, wait a second. Looks like I have one question from the audience. Let me see if I can read it. Sorry, this is not a very good. Somebody asked, Anthony, are there tools in development to assist in contextual evaluation of suspect images? Well, that's kind of like what what you guys
Is
do.
the question the contextual evaluation?
Yeah,
Because
he's saying, yeah.
we sit on the board of the ISO committee for fake media. Everybody is moving in that direction, which means basically tagging and tracing a video or a document through the blockchain. When that
Okay.
will be standardized, we don't know, but we are working in the cracks where things that haven't been authenticated or have not been contextualized need to be verified, or that are live for that matter.
Okay.
Yes,
And he's asking, he goes, will the blockchain add this?
that's exactly it.
Aid
I
this.
wouldn't
Okay.
use the term blockchain because it's yesterday's technology, but distributed ledger technology, yes, this is what Microsoft is doing. This is what Adobe is working on, but it doesn't save you from live spear phishing attacks, and it doesn't save you from what we call legacy documents, taking a
Okay.
picture of a document and sending it. But yeah, this is where the industry is moving, and that's where we are not, because that's what everybody else is doing. So
Yeah.
yes.
And somebody else is asking, she asked, would physically meeting with persons assist with reducing deepfakes? And I think yes, understandably that's quite difficult in today's pandemic crisis. But as long as you know what because I mean, and I could remember, in my days when I was a compliance officer, we did most of our onboarding via email, or phone calls. This is before the, I'm probably dating myself, but this is before the time of a lot of the video calls were available to us. And, so you did, if I could bump into somebody I had, worked with, for years and yet not recognize them on the street because all I relied on was a copy of a passport.
The use here that's interesting, it's not so much with the onboarding, it has to do with the actual office security. We're
Mhm.
working with Singapore, because in Singapore, you take a picture of your ID, you take a picture of yourself, and you walk in seamlessly to a high-rise with the facial recognition of the building having recognized you as going to that meeting and that floor. So if you can forge the ID, the picture on the ID, you can either forge your face or the picture on the ID, and you can spoof the systems of the building and get into a meeting you should not be in, which would be very much like what Wes was describing, getting a meeting with a CEO or somebody else.
Yeah,
Did that make sense?
interesting. Fantastic. Okay,
That
well,
is
those
it.
are the only two questions. The other thing I would say is another upcoming event is BDO Cayman is having a virtual conference in October. I'll actually be speaking at that, presenting on source of wealth and funds. There's some other excellent speakers. I'm very impressed by their speaker lineup. Again, that is virtual, and they do offer 3 continuing education credits for anybody who is trying to find a way to get your annual CPD hours in by the end of the year. So please feel free to join us. I did put the link in the chat, so you can just take a look. I'll hang out here for a while, but please feel free to take a look at that link. It's bdo.ky. You can just search events for BDO Cayman events, and you'll find it. And again, it's just a half day, but a very good lineup of speakers and topics. So please join us. Again, thank you, Anthony, so much. I'll go back to your to the slide that shows your email, and I'm just going to kind of invite everybody to please reach out to Anthony if you would like to learn more about his technology or what they're doing over there in Switzerland. And Anthony, I hope to see you stateside someday.
As soon as travel
As soon
restrictions
as
allow.
exactly, I
Absolutely.
didn't realize. Yeah, I didn't even realize that a lot of the UK nationals still couldn't fly over to the US. I just found out yesterday. I was like, I can't believe
I
that.
don't have a problem coming. I have a US passport, but the problem is people just, half the people I want to meet over Zoom anyway. So what's the point for the
Yeah,
moment?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Wes, too, for participating today. And Anthony, you have a great evening. And also to our audience, I hope you have a great day.
Thank you for
Thank
the
you.
opportunity to speak. I appreciate that, Kimberly. Have a good
Thanks,
evening.
Thank you.
Anthony, and thanks everybody.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thank you. Bye.